Although the scientific endeavor has nothing to offer atheism, atheists have co-opted it and employed it as a facade which they wrap around atheism in order to make it appear as if it is deserving of the merits of scientific respectability. Science has plenty to offer everyone, including atheists, but I think I actually agree that it doesn't have anything to offer atheism. Atheism isn't a worldview or a mindset or some sort of agenda. Atheism is simply the lack of belief in gods. That's it. You can be an atheist and still know absolutely nothing about science, but there is an obvious trend here. The more you know about science, the more likely you are to be an atheist. The more you understand about how the world really works, the more you realize that there's no need for a god. As is pointed out elsewhere in the article, 85% of the members of the National Academy of Sciences in the US do not believe in a god. The contradiction in the atheists' attempt to employ science towards their end is 1. They claim that science only deals with the material and therefore has nothing to say about the immaterial or supernatural. 2. They claim that science has disproved the immaterial or supernatural. I'm sure some atheists do. Those atheists are wrong. Science is based on methodological naturalism, which essentially states that all natural phenomena have natural causes. This means that only that which is natural is knowable, because anything supernatural would not manifest in the natural world. Therefore, we can never know anything about the supernatural, not even whether it exists or not. Science has not disproved the immaterial or supernatural, but it has rendered them irrelevant. In any event, for those atheists who have made their minds up as to God's non-existence, it follows that there is no evidence for God's existence. Haven't we been over this? Atheists generally don't assert that no gods exist. Sure, some probably do, and they are every bit as unjustified in believing this as theists are in believing that gods exist. That is, unless we're talking about some specific god whose existence is either logically impossible or in conflict with observable reality. This restricts their thinking because their chosen worldview would not allow them to follow the evidence, but would numb their cognitive faculties as they stare into the corner of absolute materialism. Atheism is the Valium of the people. Okay, let's get this straight. Atheism and materialism are two completely separate things. You can reject materialism and still be an atheist. Plenty of Buddhists, animists, and even postmodernists believe in the supernatural, but not God specifically. The Valium reference is totally inappropriate. Religion is the sedative. It's religion that numbs you and makes you stop looking for answers. Materialism, and by extension science, encourages you to keep looking or keep questioning. Religion provides quick and easy answers without any concern for whether those answers are correct or not, so that you'll stop looking. Evolution is the atheist's origins myth. Evolution is completely separate from atheism, and it's not a myth. It's a scientific theory backed by unbelievable amounts of evidence, and it also happens to be an observable fact. It is rather ironic today that many connect science with atheism. It's really a Christian enterprise. No, science is completely independent of religion. I'll grant you that Christians have done a lot for science, but this was in spite of their religion and not because of it. Christianity has always opposed science whenever it came into conflict with established church dogma. Even today, when mainstream Christianity accepts things like heliocentrism, the theory of evolution, and Big Bang cosmology, people like the author of this very article still adhere to dogmatic rules that are completely incompatible with science, such as, if the evidence contradicts the word of the Bible, then ignore the evidence. Atheism and Miracles. Atheists often argue that miracles cannot occur because the laws of nature, or natural laws, are immutable. By a conveniently self-serving inference, they further argue that since miracles do not occur, the supernatural, God, must not exist. It's not atheism that assumes that the laws of nature are immutable. Atheism doesn't address that issue. Atheism is a lack of belief in gods, that's it. It's science that makes that assumption, and it couldn't function without it, as there's no way to make predictions without rules to base those predictions on. Since science works, that justifies the assumption. But this has nothing to do with atheism. What are the laws of nature? Here our interest is not necessarily to list and describe them, but to point out that what we term the laws of nature are our generalizations about how the natural world normally works, which are inferred from observations of the natural world. Correct? One question to keep in mind is whether we have discovered all the laws of nature. That is our knowledge complete? No, definitely not. For example, we don't have a working theory of quantum gravity. Are they immutable? Yes, they are immutable. See, if it turns out that a law as we understand it can change, then it will change in accordance with a more fundamental law. The problem here seems to be the assumption that natural laws are prescriptive. They're not, they're descriptive. It's simply a description of how nature behaves. If nature starts behaving differently, then that change in behavior is part of nature's behavior. As such, the laws describing the behavior must allow for this. What if they are not immutable? They are. What if they are immutable? In such a case, God can still break or bend them. Really? Okay, prove it. A necessary first step would be to prove that God exists to begin with. According to such a scenario, God would have created what we understand to be immutable laws for the very purpose of displaying his ability to break or bend them and thereby alert us to the miraculous. In fact, without such laws, we would be unable to detect miracles. Okay, fair enough. So show me a miracle, and prove to me that it's a violation of the laws of nature and not just our understanding of them. See, here's the problem. Lightning appeared miraculous until it was understood that it's a natural phenomenon explained by the laws of electromagnetism. Rainbows seem miraculous, but are explained by optics. Earthquakes, plate tectonics. Life, biochemistry. Consciousness, neuroscience. All miracles fall into one of two categories: things we didn't understand to be natural phenomena at the time, and things that we can't confirm even happened. The basic atheist opinion on miracles is certainly that they do not occur, but beyond dismissing all miracle claims out of hand, atheists are likely to, without evidence, claim that what are thought to be miracles are, in reality, merely the outworking of natural laws in rare and unexpected ways. Therefore, they place their faith in expecting that in the future, science will find material explanations for unexplained miracles. The science of the gaps. Science, not atheism, operates from the assumption that natural phenomena have natural explanations. And yes, when science, again, science, not atheism, can't offer an answer, it is assumed that the answer is simply unknown but still natural. Why? Because that means we can keep searching for it. The alternative is to stop investigating, shrug, and call it a day. That way we'll never find the answer. Science of the gaps means, I don't know, so I'd better keep looking. God of the gaps means, I don't know, so I'll just assume God is the answer and stop looking. The former is an honest answer that encourages further study. The latter is a big fat argument from ignorance. Considering this view, one can only wonder how or why any atheist would deny any miracle claim. Because every alleged miracle that has ever been confirmed to have occurred has turned out to be a natural phenomenon, and the rest are irrelevant since we can't confirm that they even did occur. Why would they not state something to the likes of, Jesus did in fact resurrect from the dead, but it was due to a genetic mutation, a coincidental intermingling of natural laws, etc.? Because there's no evidence that he did rise from the dead. Origins. As to the issue of how life began on Earth, various theories have been proposed and various experiments have been carried out. None of which have anything to do with atheism. Atheism is a lack of belief in gods. That's it. Evolutionists, when candid about abiogenesis, admit that the prospects for demonstrating that it could have happened are not good, to say the least. No, that's not quite right. First of all, evolution and abiogenesis are separate things, so don't call the biochemists studying abiogenesis evolutionists. That's misleading. Second, we know that abiogenesis happened. Life hasn't always existed, it must therefore have come from non-living matter. What's hard to show, and may even turn out to be impossible to show, is exactly how this happened. There are several competing theories being explored at the moment. Maybe one of them will turn out to be successful, or maybe some other theory no one has thought of yet. But it's important to point out that the fact that we don't have a definitive answer today doesn't mean anything more than that. It doesn't mean God did it. It means we don't know. At least not yet. Indeed, just like any and all experiments that have ever taken place, successful abiogenesis experiments would only prove purposeful creation. The end result of any and every experiment is the product of the handiwork of pre-existing beings who created their results. You've clearly never set foot in a lab or a science classroom for that matter. The way experiments work is you set up the conditions and let nature take its course. Experiments tell us how nature behaves under the specific conditions being tested. The fact that the conditions were set up on purpose doesn't affect how nature behaves under those conditions. Of course, we could also show that evolution, neo-Darwinism vis-a-vis mutations and natural selection, does not explain the diversity of life on Earth, but it is a sufficient challenge for the atheist that life could not even get started without a super-intelligent creator. No, you couldn't, because evolution does explain the diversity of life just fine. And yes, life could get started without magic. There is not one single step in the process that we know requires the laws of nature, even as we understand them today, to be violated. At best, creationists can point out that there are steps that we don't yet fully understand, but they can't prove that a god must be involved. In fact, they can't even prove that a god is a possible alternative, since they can't even prove that a god exists. This is enough for any atheist. We don't need an answer to where life came from in order to not believe in gods. As long as the theists can't prove that a god created life, the question of the origin of life is entirely irrelevant to the issue of atheism. Atheism isn't and does not include an explanation for the origin or diversity of life. These are questions for science, not atheism. Haven't we been over this enough times by now? Atheism is a lack of belief in gods. That's it. The link between atheism and science is that science is a useful tool for learning about the natural world, and a lot of atheists recognize this and use it. But guess what? So do a lot of religious people, and when they do, they reach the same conclusions as their atheist colleagues. This is because the scientific method eliminates religious bias. Fundamentalists have a problem with this because they want their holy books to be literally true, religious bias, and yet compatible with science. The only way to accomplish this is to try to redefine the science in a way that makes it utterly useless. Atheists and moderate theists use science as it is, a method for learning about the natural world which relies on methodological naturalism, brutal skepticism, and the will to follow the evidence wherever it leads. Fundamentalists use a corrupted parody of science called creationism as a form of apologetics. In response to the first sentence of this chapter, no, Mariano, it's fundamentalists, not atheists and not moderates, who co-opt science and employ it as a facade which they wrap around Bronze Age fairy tales in order to make it appear as if they are deserving of the merits of scientific respectability. And only those who don't know the first damn thing about science are ignorant enough to fall for it.